Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead, and we are so pleased to have you with us today. This video is at the request of actually a number of people, but a couple of people very recently, but we've had several people over the last 2 or 3 years ask. In our opening segment with that little video with the music, there are jars of soup with a lemon in them, and people always want to know, what is that? What is that? Will you do the video on that? Today is that day. We are going to be doing the video on chicken soup with lemon. And so this is one of the easiest multi-ingredient recipes that we can do. This past week I realized I was down to just 1 quart of chicken broth left, and I recognize I use it all the time. I don't use beef broth as much as I use chicken broth. And so I put 3 whole chickens out in my Presto stovetop canner and used it just as a pressure cooker, not a canner. And I pressured those 3 chickens. I took the meat off the bones, and I was left with 13 quarts of chicken broth. 4 of those that you see right here today. And we're going to turn these into this chicken soup. So I had plenty of chicken that I could dice up. This recipe calls for chicken that has already been cooked. This was such an easy prep. It took me maybe 15 minutes this morning to cut up the chicken, which is 3 cups of chicken. And by the way, this is a tested recipe. This is not the canning your own soup recipes according to the USDA guidelines. However, it's going to turn out to be just about the same procedure. This tested recipe is in this Ball Blue Book. It's in 2 other Ball Blue Books. It's in the Bernardin book. It is on the Ball Canning Recipe website, and it is on healthycanning.com. It is all over the place. So we are going to just follow this as a tested recipe, just exactly. So it calls for 4 quarts of broth right here, 3 cups of chicken, that's on the bottom of this bowl, and then 1.5 cups of diced celery and carrots, and then 1 medium onion, which is about 1 cup. And all we have to do is just dump the veggies right into a pot. And this is what it looks like now, with the chicken now on the top. And then we will dump in these 4 quarts of broth. We're going to add salt and pepper, and I'm putting in a couple of generous teaspoons of pepper. That would be salt. And then Jim and I quite like pepper. About 1/2 teaspoon of pepper.
Sure it isn't salt.
I know it, I got those mixed up. And this is our soup. Now, according to the recipe, what we need to do next is put it on the stove, bring it to a boil, and then we have to simmer this very gently for 30 minutes. So we're not going to do this on our butane stove. I'm going to put it back here because it's all going to be off camera. We will be back after 30 minutes when this is nice and hot, heated, and pretty much cooked, and then we'll get it into the jars. Meanwhile, I'm going to wash the jars that the broth came out of, and those are the exact jars we will use to can. So I will see you in 30 minutes when we are ready to get the soup in the jars, and we'll be putting those in the NESCO canner today. So see you shortly. All right, here we go. When I do vegetable soup, these jars are hot. Whenever I do vegetable soup or anything that has a lot of solids in it, that have to be evenly distributed across jars. It's my big worry that I won't get an even distribution. So to solve that, I just drain the liquid and put some solids in first until I get a good representation of all solids in each jar. And then we'll put the broth in. That's pretty good. All right, now we're going to fill with the broth. And of course, I'll be picking up a few solids as we go here as well. And if you wish, you can add more dry spices if you like. We're just going to go very plain with this. The recipe is very plain, but there's no reason that you cannot add additional spices. Like I might add Italian seasoning or a little bit of my favorite Italian oregano. But this, we're just going to go very plain. Now, as it happens, this recipe, even though it is a tested recipe, still looks like it is conforming very closely to the USDA guidelines for canning your own recipe, which is about half solids and half liquid. I'm going to have some broth left. I think if I were to do this particular recipe again, I would put only 3 quarts of broth in. I'm going to have about a quart left over. And my broth is just precious. Now this won't go to waste. We'll eat it for sure. So here is how much I have left. Or I could have just canned a 1/5 quart, but I'm canning in the NESCO, which only holds 4 quarts. So I'm going to just quickly check for air bubbles. Now, in the picture at the front of our opening video, I just did that on a whim. I had just taken lemon slices out of the dehydrator and was making chicken soup. And so I just decided, oh, what the heck? I'll just put in lemon slice in each of these. And I'm going to find another whole one, see if I can. There's one. These have browned a little bit. They are over a year old, but they're still just fine. And I want this to show on the outside of the jar just for the effect's sake. So I have to bury it down there in the solids. So there it is. All right, here they all are.
Good one.
Now, very hot. I already have 2 quarts of water in the canner, so it is ready to go. And we'll get these in just a moment. Now that little tiny slice of lemon isn't going to hurt a thing, even though it was not in the recipe. Lemons are, of course, very high acid, so we are not adding any low acid food to this recipe. And actually, they kind of disappear after they're canned anyway, but they leave behind just a touch of lemon taste. It's enough to just lift the taste of the soup just a little bit, and it just makes it, it just makes it so good. Checking for finger tight. These are hot. lifting them in the canner. And remember, I said the 2 quarts of water are already in here, and I'm putting them on the rack. I checked the gasket and the vent pipe to be sure everything was okay. And according to the recipe, we process quarts for 90 minutes. So I'm going to plug the canner in. And the NESCO is so easy. First of all, I want to be sure that the pressure regulator is in the up position so it will vent, and then set the time for 90 minutes. So we have 90 minutes in and then start. Now this little racetrack will run around until it builds enough steam to vent. It will vent for 10 minutes, after which I'll drop this down to hold the steam inside, and then it will build up pressure. And this is a 15-pound PSI weight, so it will build up pressure to 15 pounds, and then it will start the countdown. So we will bring you back when these are ready to come out of the canner. Pressure is down in the canner. We've let it sit for just a few minutes, like 5 or 6 minutes, so we can now open it. And I'm going to turn it this way so I can get these out. Oh, they're beautiful. Looking for the lemon.
It's right there in front.
Oh, there it is, right there in the front. It is up at the top.
Yep.
So, looking at the top. Yep, all the lemons are going to be at the top, it looks like. This lemon is actually floating on the top, just like that, so it's hard to see. And this one has come apart a little bit. They are beautiful. The pictures of the chicken soup in our opening little video clip, those pictures were taken before processing. When I processed them, they did exactly the same thing too. But the flavor is in the soup, and that's the important thing. I had some of the leftover soup for lunch about an hour ago, and oh, it was so good. And it's just a testimony to me that you really don't need anything else besides salt and pepper and the ingredients here to have a lovely, lovely meal. So there's about 1 more serving left, and so I'll probably have it for lunch unless Jim wants it. He had other leftovers. We had 0 siphoning, which reminds me that earlier in the late last week, I think Saturday, when we were doing the broth, in this particular canner, we had the most explosive siphoning I have ever experienced in all of my years of canning. It sent a blade of water out from underneath the lid about right here, and it sounded just like a geyser going off. The jar only lost about this much water, but boy was it explosive. I had to put it back in the canner so it would leak down into the water because it was spewing all over the countertop. I have never had that happen before. So I guess even as experienced as you are, you just never know. You can have unexpected things happen. So this soup is beautiful. We're tickled to be able to add this to our food storage, and what a simple, fast, and easy thing to can. So I hope this answered all questions about what is that jar with the lemon in it. It's chicken soup with lemon. And when we serve this, if we want to add things like noodles or other forms of pasta, or even beans or whatever we might want, that is just fine to do once it's opened and when it's heating up. So lots of versatility here as well. This is just about the most beautiful color of soup. So I think the carrots lent a little bit of the orange to the broth. Thank you so much for being with us, and we really appreciate you very much. And we will see you at our next video.